This is the finished result of another fun weekend of renovating and painting this old house we live in. I think we've achieved a pretty nice result by installing these VJ lining boards on the wall behind me. It's really quite an easy DIY project you can do over the weekends and makes a big impact. All the tips and tricks and easy to follow steps are in this video to follow along with. V-jointed lining boards are a great way to enhance your living space and freshen up your home. It's a cost-effective DIY project that anyone can do. The first step is to remove the skirting baseboard. This will allow the VJ lining boards to be installed all the way to about 10mm from the bottom of the floor. To remove the timber skirting or any other timber trims, run a sharp blade along the intersection between the timber and the plaster. This will stop the paint from peeling off the wall in the process. Then, starting from one end, jimmy the skirting from the wall using a wood chisel or moulding bar. I will reattach the skirting once the VJ lining boards are installed. The next step is to get a level line along the wall. I'll use a laser level to mark each end of the wall, then run a chalk line between each mark to give me a clear, level line to measure from. If you don't have a laser level, a standard level and straight edge is fine to also use. Before you begin, make sure to use a licensed electrician to disconnect any lights or power points on the wall. The next step is to use an electronic stud finder to mark the timber frame positions in the wall. We're going to install the lining boards from the floor to the ceiling cornice. If the ceiling cornice is not level, I'll need to make allowances in my lining boards for a nice intersection. I'll then run a level down the wall, marking with a pencil to show where the timber stud positions are. I'll use a 3m straight edge and 2m level to check to see if the external corner is plumb. I'll now go through and measure the size of the first lining board to be installed, starting from the external corner. As the ceiling is level, I can use the factory edge to meet into the cornice. I'll measure from the top and use a circular saw to cut the bottom of the sheet to the correct length. Make sure you use a dust mask when cutting MDF sheeting, as the dust is terrible for you to breathe in. I'll mark and cut the amount to be taken off the external edge to allow for the out of plumb wall. I'm using a track saw to achieve a perfectly straight cut, as this cut will be exposed. The next step is to transfer the positions of the timber studs onto the lining board sheet. I'll mark out the nail set out at 500mm centers down the studs and 300mm along the bottom and top plates. I'll also measure, mark and cut out the positions of the lights and light switches using a 54mm hole saw and a jigsaw. To cut out for the power point and switch, I drilled two 16mm holes in opposite corners of the template and then follow along the lines using my jigsaw. Once the sheet is prepared, I'll go through and apply a flexible adhesive to the wall for the sheet to stick to. I like to apply a generous amount of flexible adhesive, as this helps to hide any imperfections of an old wall. Next, I'll place the sheet on top of 10mm packers, install the sheet to the correct location. Once I'm happy with the sheet set out in the right place, I use a fit out gun to fix the sheet into position. I'm using the timber frame nail set out locations that I've already marked onto the sheet from my set out. If you don't have a nail gun, just use 40mm bullet head nails. Now it's just going through the process and repeating for the remaining sheets. For the next two sheets, I'll measure from the level line to the floor and ceiling, then make adjustments in length as needed. The bottom of the sheet needs a 10mm space to allow for expansion. This gap will be covered when I reinstall the skirting. I can then glue and lift the next sheet onto the packers into position. Slide the sheet until the tongue slips into the groove. Leave a 2mm gap between the sheets for expansion. I'll then go through and nail the sheet in the pre-marked locations. It's now time to measure up the final sheet. Check to make sure everything is parallel and straight. This part of the ceiling is slightly out of level, so I'll adjust the top of the sheet for it to fit nicely. I'll transfer the amount that the ceiling is out of level onto the top of my sheet. Then I'll use a knife to scribe the line, then plane the sheet to the correct size. I'll use a bit of sandpaper to give a light sand and then check the top of my sheet for straight. I can then cut the sheet to the correct length. The existing wall that my sheet is finishing into has a large bow in it. Therefore, I need to scribe an allowance into my last sheet. I'll use a circular saw and planer to scribe the sheet to the correct size. Now time to go ahead and install the last VJ lining board. Apply the glue, sit the sheet on the packers, bring the wires through the sheet and slide the tongue side into the groove. Once the final sheet is locked into place, we can go through and nail it into position. The next task is to reattach the skirting I removed earlier. Add some PVA glue along the back and then nail back into position. That's all the VJ lining boards and skirting installed, and it's looking really nice. There's still the painting to finish this weekend, so let's get started with the preparation work. The first step of the prep is to apply no more gaps to the intersection between the two lining board sheets. Remember that I left a 2mm gap between the sheets for expansion. This needs to be filled with a flexible gap filler before painting. I apply the filler and then wipe off and smooth with a damp cloth. The technique I use to achieve the best result is to use a brush and paint the V jointing with an undercoat. They are a bit more time consuming to paint. I then follow through with a roller to finish off the undercoat. Once the undercoat is dry, I'll then repeat the process using 2 coats of wall paint. I'm using a water-based acrylic shade of white named Grayscale. Now all the painting is finished, all I have to do is remove the tape and do a quick cleanup. The last remaining task is to get the electrician to reconnect the lights, switch and power point. Then we are all finished for the weekend. It's been another fun weekend of work with a good result. Thanks a lot for watching the video. I really hope that you got something from it. Please let me know in the comment section below any excuses you have of not working on the weekends. Mine aren't working anymore. I'm going to be making many more DIY renovation videos, so why not subscribe to the channel. If you've enjoyed this video, check out these other DIY walkthrough videos I've made. See you next time and thanks for watching.